President.
The Honourable Scott Farlow. I remind honourable members that this is the honourable member's inaugural speech, and I would ask them to extend all of the courtesies to him that are usually afforded.
I rise, Mr. President, to second the motion for the adoption of the address in reply to the Governor's opening speech. I commend the Governor on his address to Parliament and reflect on his sobering reminder that we, the men and women gathered in these chambers, have the authority and opportunity to implement lasting and meaningful change. On these words, as the Governor sat ensconced in the vice-regal chair, I cast my mind back to the first time I sat in this chamber. That occasion was Australia Day, sometime in the 1990s. My parents brought me to this Parliament past the classic cars that line Macquarie Street. Mr. President, on sitting in the chamber that Australia Day, hearing the story of this council, the first and oldest legislative body in our nation, I never imagined that I would enter this place as a member and rise in this chamber and have that distinct opportunity that His Excellency outlined yesterday. From the transportation of William Bellamy to the colony of New South Wales in 1781, members of my family have made a life for themselves in this state. I am humbled and privileged to be afforded the honour to represent the people of New South Wales and the Liberal Party. I take my oath of allegiance to Her Majesty and her successors seriously and seek to represent the people of this state in this House with dignity, honour and determination as this place's 868th member. I will not squander that opportunity. Mr. President, while I never imagined that I would sit in this chamber, I have had a deep and abiding political interest from a very young age. As an only child who from a young age needed to converse with adults, I developed a working knowledge of two things: sport and politics. This formative study led me to two distinct and abiding passions: the Balmain, now West's Tigers, and the Liberal Party of Australia. I'm glad we can agree on something. Whether it was running my own mock polling booth at home in the 1988 state election at the age of 5, or arguing with teachers over the importance of a broad-based tax system in both 1993 and 1998. I've been fighting for Liberal ideals and policy my whole life and intend to do so in this place. In this, the Liberal Party's 70th year, I'm humbled to be entering Parliament as its representative and servant. The Liberal Party in Australia owe a great debt of gratitude to Sir Robert Menzies in having the foresight to create a non-Labor party which would stand the test of time. In 1962, Sir Robert Menzies outlined to the New South Wales Young Liberal movement that the party was formed and succeeded because we had something to believe in, not just something to oppose. He went on to conclude that, I don't believe that governments provide enterprise. If you want enterprise, if you want vision, you have to go to the individual human being. To compare the mechanism of government as if it was some sentient creature and with the genius of the human being is absurd. It was fitting that Menzies made these remarks to the New South Wales Young Liberal movement, a body of which I was the longest-serving president and am proud to be a life member of, because they still encapsulate my views today. I stand in this place as a Liberal in the classical sense of the word. I believe, as John Stuart Mill laid out in his seminal essay on liberty, that the only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. Put simply, I believe the role of government should be a limited one, not to be there to administer the lives of its citizens, but to protect them from the imposition of their rights by others. As Milton Friedman put it, government should be there to act as a referee, not a player. There exists today an unfortunate notion that if there is a problem, that is a problem for government to fix. It is not necessarily that these things shouldn't be fixed, but it is often the case that when we fix things, we create more problems. It's like the introduction of the cane toad to control the cane beetle. We all know how that one worked out. While I'm an advocate of limited government, I support the role that government plays in supporting those who cannot support themselves. We in this place have an obligation to act as a voice for the voiceless. I believe in a functioning safety net, but I'll always fight for a hand up, not a handout. As Margaret Thatcher wrote in the 1979 Conservative Party manifesto, we want to work with the grain of human nature, helping people to help themselves and others. The best form of welfare is a job. The best housing policy is the one that allows individuals and families to provide for their own accommodation and the best form of insurance is the family unit and its broader network. These are social constructs that have been formed from time immemorial. They develop not out of some bizarre edict, but by reason and nature. I'm a conservative in so much as I'm a realist. Conservatism deals with the world as it is, not the world under some abstract theory. As a conservative, I do not say no to change, but I do not endorse change for the sake of change. This is why I've always stood and supported our current constitutional arrangements and still see no need to adopt a republic. But for those things where the case for change is clear, we as Conservatives must move forward and reform, because there is an actual need. As the great Conservative thinker Edmund Burke outlined, a state without the means of some change is without the means of its own conservation. The state of New South Wales has proven and will continue to prove that it is capable of change and is capable of more than mere conservation, but greatness. To this end of making New South Wales great, I believe that we need to rectify the federation, because our state can only be great if our nation is. Firstly, let me lay out, I am a states writer. A supporter of our federalist system and the vision of our forefathers in drafting our constitution, I'm a supporter because I believe our states, and in particular this one, can be an engine room for policy, and I believe that competition between our states drives better outcomes for our nation. But the problem is that Canberra is too big. There exists a vertical fiscal imbalance where the states are left carrying the can. The duplication of functions between the federal and state government, which leads to added expenses and regulations for individuals and businesses, needs to be eliminated. To this end, we may need to cede certain things to the federal government, but the Commonwealth also needs to exit the field in areas that are the privy of the states. This is but one part of the story when the states face an annual revenue shortfall of around $96 billion per annum. Treasurer Hockey recently said, the states need to accept responsibility for the things they run. If they do that, and if we're all accountable for the things we are actually responsible for, we'll have a more efficient system. I agree wholeheartedly with the Treasurer, but we can only be accountable if we have the means to fund our responsibilities. At present, the states are treated like teenagers, with a part-time job having their allowance doled out by their federal parents. 43% of our total revenue is provided by the federal government, and that is simply unsustainable. It must be remembered we are a federation of states. The states came first, and the states should have the means by which to fund their own areas of responsibility. This is why I was so heartened to hear the calls of Premier Baird, and I acknowledge his presence in the gallery, for the states to have the ability to levy a component of income tax. And I'm thankful for the support it received from the member for Eden Monero, Dr. Peter Hendy. It is a move that I have supported for a long time, and one that has the potential to give the states an ability to fund their own areas of responsibility. Most importantly, funding should be set for each state, and they should rise and fall on their own policy settings, and not head back to Canberra, cap in hand, asking them to fix their mess. By this means, we can encourage competitive federalism to thrive and lower taxes to prevail. Business can move, people can move, and only through competition can we make this state great. And on this point, I would also like to address payroll tax. The federal government's tax discussion paper foreshadows making greater use of payroll taxes. For the life of me, I've never been able to understand why government believes it a good idea to tax job creation. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a position, as a state government, where we are wedded to this tax, with it accounting for 30% of our state's tax revenue. It is widely agreed that the people who end up paying payroll tax are employees through lower wages and consumers through higher costs. But what concerns me most is those who are kept out of the labour force due to this tax on jobs. It is for these reasons that any attempts to weight our tax system towards increased payroll taxes needs to be resisted, and New South Wales must ensure we have the lowest possible payroll tax rate. The Coalition has made significant steps in reducing the payroll tax burden on businesses by increasing the threshold, extending and increasing payroll tax rebates for business, and proposing a new incentive payment for small businesses that take on new employees. These are worthy changes that make New South Wales more competitive. Our Premier is committed to creating 150,000 more jobs and put the Premiers of Queensland and Victoria on notice that we're coming for their state's jobs. I stand shoulder to shoulder with the Premier in this endeavour, and to achieve it we must lower our payroll tax burden, not just by initiatives, but by a permanent and sustained reduction in our payroll tax burden. Businesses make decisions on the long term. If New South Wales is a low tax and minimal regulation economy, business will move here. As has been proved time and time again, lower taxes attract more business and create more jobs. Tax cuts can and do lead to increased revenue. This is how we can provide the services that New South Wales needs and make this state great. Mr. President, I've spent some time addressing our fiscal challenges when it comes to revenue, but it is not a one-sided equation. Under the stewardship of Mike Baird as both Premier and Treasurer, we have made remarkable grounds in restraining our expenditure growth, getting our budget back on track and cutting regulation. I'm appalled by the efforts of our opponents to cast fiscal responsibility as savage cuts. Nothing could be further from the truth. Only by balancing the budget in the long run can we create the environment to deliver the services that the people of New South Wales expect from their government and help our economy to grow. Put simply, dollars do not equate to outcomes. At times, we fall into the trap of explaining complex ideas with a simple dollar figure. This only leads to a never-ending downward spiral where government gets bigger and the true value of projects lose their worth. If policy is governed by an unending game of one-upmanship on who spent more, who has a record spend, and how much wow a certain dollar amount can attract, will be nothing better than an episode of Hollow Men. I want to see us as a parliament tackle problems and deliver solutions for our community, not simply throw money at them. Spending should never be the end game. We can be better than this. We can deliver policy that focuses on outcomes, not inputs. We should be able to herald the fact that we have spent less and achieved more. One way we can tackle growing and wasteful spending is through the introduction of transparency of government expenditure. Transparency websites have been introduced all over the world to give citizens and taxpayers an insight into how their government spends their money. These transparency expenditure portals have reduced waste, saved money and prevented corruption. They have been introduced by governments across the political spectrum, from Texas to California. Mr. President, I believe it is time that we introduce one in New South Wales as well. Such an initiative will shine light on government expenditure and will help the people of New South Wales understand how it is that we spend their money. Policymakers, bureaucrats, journalists and citizen bloggers alike will be able to dissect the figures and shine a light on some deep, dark crevices of spending that have been left untouched and hidden. In today's digital age, citizens are demanding and rightfully expect their government to be more open and more transparent. We have come a long way in New South Wales under the coalition government, but there still is further for us to go to attack waste and profligacy. I'd like to extend the Australian Taxpayers Alliance and my good friend Tim Andrews a vote of thanks for raising this issue for Australia and also for your assistance in my path to becoming an upper house man. Mr. President, I enter this chamber as a team player on behalf of the Liberal Party. It is only through the party that I sit here, and it is the people of New South Wales, but the Liberal Party first and foremost, that I represent in this place, especially as an at-large representative for the party. My core constituency is the membership of the Liberal Party across this state, and I acknowledge so many of them who've come in the gallery today. In his inaugural speech, the Premier outlined why he was In his inaugural speech, the Premier outlined why he was proud of our party in saying, "It is the party that has always allowed members to exercise their discretion in relation to matters of conscience." The Premier then went further in calling for the party to adopt a free vote in matters that relate directly to a member's community. The Premier reflected his father in his stances in calling for this, and I reflect mine in what I say today. As my dad has always said to me, an MP needs to stand up for his constituents. In echoing the calls of the Premier, I too am proud to believe in and protect the Liberal Party's right for members to exercise their conscience, in accordance with the rules of the party room. That exercise is not there only for matters of moral conscience, but matters of all conscience. That is one reason that I've always been drawn to the Liberal Party. Mr. President, as you know, I am a team player. I come to this place to represent the Liberal Party and its values. I'm not a maverick, nor intend to become one. But our increasingly homogenous system of voting along strict party lines troubles me. It is a phenomenon that has increasingly taken root in our democracy, largely as a result of the archaic caucus provisions of the ALP. And it is one that is not shared by other democracies in the Anglosphere. In the United States and the United Kingdom, members exercise a greater degree of independence in their voting, and hence their accountability for the decisions they make. In these nations, whips like our great Dr. Phelps spend more time arm twisting than tweeting. I yearn for the day when members opposite will have the ability to exercise their conscience and not face expulsion from their party. It should be the right of the party and of the electorate to vote to maintain a member on the basis of their voting record. This is a fundamental tenet of our Westminster democracy, that every member should be responsible for their own vote. And I fear this tenet has been eroded in this nation, and I defend its right to continue in our party. As part of that party, I'm very proud to stand in this place as part of Premier Beard's team. I wish to recognise in this House the work and leadership of our Premier, Mike Beard. Without him, there are many members of this Parliament who would not be here today, and I'm one of those. I'm excited to be part of a team with a reformist plan for New South Wales that will lower the cost of living pressures, improve our economy, and deliver infrastructure that our state desperately needs. As someone who grew up literally at the exit of the M4 in Leicester Avenue, Strathfield, I cannot wait to see the delivery of WestConnex and the missing link that this city so desperately needs. And I thank the Minister for Roads for his work on the project. I'm glad to enter this team with two great friends who I had the pleasure of spending many hours with during the campaign, Adam Crouch and Mark Taylor, who are now members in the other place. Both will make wonderful representatives of their community in Parliament, and I look forward to serving with them in the years ahead. I'm also delighted to be reunited with a former work colleague and friend, Ben Franklin. Hello. Even if we now sit in different parties, we're still on the same team, even if he's on this other side of the chamber. It should be remembered that the team also consists of people who were not successful in being elected. In particular, I want to thank my fellow Legislative Council candidates, Holly Hughes and Rena Jetty, who is present in the gallery, for their efforts across the campaign. I'm sure both will achieve great things in politics and have no doubt that other red benches await my good friend Holly in the near future. As a candidate for the Legislative Council, with an electorate that spans all of New South Wales, I had the great opportunity to campaign with so many tremendous candidates, particularly in Western Sydney, the Central Coast and Hunter. I want to acknowledge today the tremendous efforts of Bernard Bertusa, Hannah Reeves, Lyndon Gannon, Karen Howard, Jason Pauling and Steve Thompson. I'd also like to particularly acknowledge the work and presence in the gallery of Raman Bala, Sandra Kerr, Michael Sharp, Nomiki Paniatakis, Julie Passis. All were tremendous advocates for their communities, and I'm sure will continue to make a significant contribution to our party. It's also important in this place to recognise the contribution of our friends who have not returned to Macquarie Street, for which I believe our Parliament is the poorer. Charles Casaselli, Chris Holstein, Tony Issa, Andy Rowan and Rosa Sage. Mr President, I enter this place a Christian and wish to acknowledge in this chamber Jesus Christ as my Lord and Saviour, the King of Kings. In this place I bring my Christian values, as much as they are the values that define me. It is set out in the Synoptic Gospels that the Lord said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." The place for God's laws are in the Bible. His statutes are written in the hearts of his followers. While I believe in Christian values, while I seek to uphold them, I do not believe that it is my place to legislate them. God gave us free will of which to choose what is right and wrong, whether we would follow him or repudiate him. I do not believe that government by power or coercion can change the hearts of mankind. In coming to this house with an abiding faith, I also come to this place with a respect for the divergent faiths and cultures that exist in our community. I respect and will uphold the rights of individuals to practice any faith or no faith, free from government interference or tyranny. And I acknowledge in the gallery my good friend Vic Allardyce, who has joined us today. I also respect and encourage the political role of the church and religious organisations. While I do not believe the Bible, the Torah, the Quran or any religious text should be used as the yardstick for determining public policy, I do believe that religious institutions play an important role in our political discourse and debate, and I welcome that role. Mr President, none of us stand in this chamber alone. We're all held up through the support and works of so many, like the spire of a steeple. I cannot, in the time allowed, name each brick that supports me here today, but I'll try and recognise a few of the columns. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Sydney University Liberal Club, as it was there that I got my start in politics on my first day at campus when I was signed up by Alex Hawke, the now member for Mitchell, To Alex, I pay thanks, as it was on that day that this road started for me, and you have been a constant guide ever since. I thank you for your support, counsel, and the odd bollocking, which have all led to my entry to this place. To return to Salt, I'm proud of the club's growth, progress, and continuing commitment to classical liberal values. To two of the club's most esteemed presidents, Alex Dorr and Sasha Ewer, I give my thanks for upholding the club in the tradition, and I thank current sulkers led by William Dawes for continuing down this path and taking the club from strength to strength. I also want to pay particular thanks to my Sulk alumni, who have stood with me through every challenge and encouraged me in every journey. Tim Andrews, Mark Chan, and Simon Fontana. You're all kindred spirits, great mates, and as the member for Miranda can attest, terrible hiking buddies. I thank you all. To the New South Wales Young Liberal Movement, I thank you for my start and your support in getting to this place. To Tobias Lehman, Sophie Holman, Brendan Christie, and the President, James Wallace, I give you thanks. I also must pay particular mention to the efforts of the Flying Squad, under the direction of Joshua Crawford and Dean Shahar. Never in my time in this party have I seen a Flying Squad operate so well and make such a difference. Well done. To those kind souls who had the forbearance to put up with me on their staff, starting with Senator Conchetta Fierravanti-Wells, who I remember standing in this chamber when she was elected to the Senate from this chamber, thank you, to Peter Debnam, Greg Smith SC, the Honourable Bronwyn Bishop, and of course my good friend Lucy Wicks. From each of you I learnt a lot and will endeavour to include those learnings in my service in this place. In this House, I'd also like to acknowledge the support I've received from so many friends. Jared Bernadette, Simon Berger, Jonathan Flegg, Chantel Fenari-Osmond, Andrew Jeffries, Damien Jones, Julian Lisa, Ben Shields and Nick Tyrrell. I look forward to the contribution that they will all make to public policy in the years ahead, and hopefully in a place such as this. I'd also like to give thanks to those within the broad Liberal family who have offered me support and influenced my journey to this place. Sandra Blackmore, Sam Diamond, Justin Fazzolari, Taylor Gromosky, Ross Grove, Sean Garman, Colleen Hodges, Andrew Isaacs, Warwick Jones, Amy Lehman, Ben and Sarah Potts, Ted Singh, Vincent So, Chris Stone, Natasha Torero, Daniel and Talitha Try, and of course Helen Wyland. I thank you all. To my former Strathfield Council colleague and great mate Bill Carney and his wife Mira, I thank you for your support through many trials and tribulations. I also give thanks to my great Strathfield friends, Councillors Julian Vicari and Sangok, and of course the wonderful June. I thank all those within this Parliament who have supported me in my journey to this place. In particular, Greg Applin, Mark Courret, the Honourable Catherine Cusack, my great mate, my former Vice President, and my senior, Matt Keane, Jeff Lee, Darryl Maguire, and the now Honourable Shane Mallard. I'd also like to thank and pay acknowledgement from them in the gallery over there, Ministers Ajaka, Berejiklian and Roberts, and of course yourself, Mr President. But I'm especially grateful for the support shown by my kindred spirits and great friends in this Parliament, the Honourable Dr Peter Phelps and the Honourable Natasha McLaren-Jones, Ray Williams and Ministers Garwood and Elliott. Thank you for all being part of this journey, and I'm glad to be joining you. To David Coleman, Paul Fletcher, Craig Laundy, Crane Kelly, and of course Scott Morrison, I acknowledge your wisdom, encouragement and contribution to our nation in the Federal Parliament, and for your assistance along this road. I would not be standing here in this place if I had never had the good fortune of meeting one Nicholas Campbell. I remember meeting Nick for the first time in Canberra at an Australian Liberal Students' Federation conference. On that day, Nick, I saw someone who I thought was the brightest person in the room. That room included a subsequent federal Liberal leader and a former leader of the ACT. Nothing to this day has changed my impression. Nick, you are a great beacon of sensibility for our party and someone who has always put our party's interests first. Thank you for being my political mentor. At that same ALSF conference where I met Nick was my great mate Eugene Papany. Thanks for being roped into so many things over the years, a few of which may have helped me on my journey here. I thank you, Ellen, and both of your families for your never-ending support. Before and after politics, Mr President, there will always be family. Growing up as an only child, there are many things that you miss out on, and one thing you don't is parental love. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my parents, Mark and Cassandra, for their steadfast love and guidance throughout my life. The son of a truck driver and a receptionist, both union members, for the benefit of members opposite. Educated in public schools and the first in my family to attend university, I have not come from a privileged upbringing, yet I have been privileged to enjoy a loving one. Ronald Reagan once said, "Each generation goes further than the generation preceding it because it stands on the shoulders of that generation." Mum and Dad, today I stand here on your shoulders, and I thank you for taking that burden. To my nan and grandma, who are in the right chamber today. They really enjoyed seeing all the other members being sworn in yesterday. They say that grandparents and grandchildren are natural allies. You have been pivotal in my upbringing, my outlook, and my presence in this chamber today. I thank you, and I thank my pop and grandpa in heaven for their influence on my journey here as well. To my family in the United States, Kayleen, John and Jackie, although you're half the world away, I've always felt your love, and thank you. Now this is the emotional part. Now to my wife Penny. We forged our love together in this building, and I know it will last a lifetime. I fell in love with you not because you were a doting wife, but because you are your own person, and always will be. Thanks for your love, support, and sharing the path with me. In the words of the Premier, you rock. For Mike's benefit, on the Premier's, when he was Treasurer's first budget, he wrote in Penny's budget papers, "You rock," which was the first and probably only time Penny ever received flowers from me in competition. So, together we have created what will always be our greatest achievement, our son Christian, who I love more than words can describe, and hope and pray will never be alone. Magoo, when you read back on this one day, I want you to know I'm in this place for you, and I want to make the world you inherit a much better place so that you and your generation can stand on our shoulders and go further than we ever could have dreamed. Thank you, Mr. President.